If you look at other countries, the percentage of people who are over 65 who are poor, the United States is number one among our peers. There is a very good chance that you've played by the rules, you've worked for 40 years, and at retirement, you will be downwardly mobile into poverty.
I'm Julie Rose, and this is Top of Mind. I have been a radio journalist for 2 decades, but a few years ago, I found myself avoiding the news for long stretches because of how depressing and divisive it all seems. I still wanted to be informed and engaged on important issues, though, and I figured I couldn't be alone in that. So we created this podcast. Each episode, we tackle one tough topic in a way that will challenge you, help you feel more empathy, and empower you to become a better citizen, a kinder neighbor, and a more effective advocate. Today, why so many Americans are anxious about retirement.
My name is Aubrey Johnson. I'm 24 years old. I absolutely feel personally responsible for my own retirement. Right now, all I'm really seeing is that Social Security, these things aren't something you can necessarily rely on.
My name is Heather Sheffer. I am almost 45. I do not expect to retire. My husband and I are both self-employed, and with our large age range of children and some health issues that we have had over the past few years, when you get some money put away, then something happens and you have to use that money.
Hi, my name is Mike Cundall, and I teach at North Carolina A&T State University. I'm 50, and I'm not particularly worried about our retirement because we've done well, we've saved money as we're supposed to in 401ks that are tied to the market and this sort of stuff. If the market goes poorly, that is a bit concerning. In 2008, my wife and I had just made it to $30,000 in savings, and that money went from $30,000 to $16,000 in a blink of an eye. Now, we're very young, and so it's not a big hit to us, but if we had been 65 and just retiring, that would have been a huge hit, like almost insurmountable sort of thing. Like you're not retiring now.
No matter your age or financial situation, most Americans are worried about their retirement prospects. And with good reason. A comfortable retirement is often described as a 3-legged stool, with Social Security, an employer pension or 401k, and personal savings contributing to keep the stool steady. But nearly 1 in 4 Americans has no retirement savings. And when you look just at those who are on the cusp of retirement, so 55 to 64-year-olds, close to half of them has nothing. They still have Social Security, of course, and despite the dire headlines, it's not going anywhere. But unless Congress finds a way to get more money into the Social Security fund over the next decade, retirees could see their monthly checks cut by 20%, which makes for a very wobbly 3-legged stool and a retired life that is far slimmer financially, says economist Teresa Ghilarducci.
Meaning that there is a very good chance that you've played by the rules, and at retirement, you will be downwardly mobile into poverty. And that leads to fatalism and not planning. It leads to feeling that you don't have agency over your life. And actually that can snowball because the things that you could do to help yourself don't look possible, and they look kind of hopeless. And I think we're building, with our retirement system that we have now, we've built in shame and fatalism that actually turns around to make the problem even worse.
Teresa Ghilarducci has been studying the economics of retirement in America for 40 years. She's a professor at the New School and author of a bunch of books on the topic. Her latest is
Work, Retire, Repeat: The Uncertainty of Retirement in the New Economy.
Today on Top of Mind, we'll be hearing a lot from Ghilarducci as we dive into a range of retirement stories from people we spoke with. For some of them, retirement is going well. For some, it's not. Together, their stories help to explain our collective anxiety and point to some solutions. Ghilarducci's comment about fatalism fueling a failure to plan hit home for me. I'm turning 50 this year, and realizing that I haven't paid much attention to my retirement savings because I've assumed I'd never really be able to retire. So now I'm playing catch up, and I guess it's at least a little comforting to know that I'm not the only one. Ghilarducci says it's not entirely our fault that we're anxious and ill-prepared. In recent decades, the retirement system in America has undergone a massive shift toward a do-it-yourself framework that sets many people up to fail. The story starts in 1935 with the creation of Social Security, which basically invented retirement for the masses.
Most men were dying in their boots. Now, the wealthy got to retire, but working people, there was no sense that they'd be able to retire.
So Social Security comes around in this period, the progressive movement, and was it intended at that point to be able to provide a full retirement?
Never. Social Security was meant, like for a middle-class worker, to replace only about 40% of what they need in retirement. What was supposed to happen is pensions that you saw like in the railroads and the American Express Company, in some of the emerging companies, would fill in the rest. So 40% for a middle-class person would come from Social Security. The other 60% would basically come from a fund that workers and employers put their money into it. And a third partner was the government, but they would contribute not directly, but in the form of a tax break. So we had these tax-favored retirement accounts growing as the companies got unionized, and some companies didn't want unionization, so they adopted a pension plan to stop the unionization. So you see this model spreading.
And then the big shift.
Yeah, so in the 1980s, a couple of things. One was the PATCO strike, the air traffic controller strike, which was a nationwide strike. We usually don't have striking workers in every single town all across the nation at the same time. And Ronald Reagan decided that he was going to bust the union. So instead of negotiating with them, he fired them. And that was a signal to all unions, is that your bargaining power is flatlined. In those same years, he also oversaw a cut in Social Security benefits, not for current retirees then, but for everybody who was going to be working then. And the phoenix that was going to rise from those ashes, the new hope was going to be global trade, the thought that if we just had more free trade, that we would actually be richer. So we were going to have everybody just invest in the market. That was going to supplement what you lost in Social Security. We were going to make it liberal regulations for employers to open up a 401k. We weren't going to require that they have a 401k, and we weren't going to require that they had to invest it wisely.
This is the dawning then of the 401k coming in to sort of replace the pension plan.
And it was supposed to spread. But then as new companies came into being, they figured with a weak labor movement, they didn't have to provide anything at all.
As a result, only half of workers in the U.S. today have access to a retirement plan through their employer. And the once common practice of companies kicking in generously to match an employee's retirement savings is also disappearing. So now the first generation of workers to have spent their entire careers in this do-it-yourself system is retiring.
Hi, my name is Jay Christ. I live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'm 63 years old.
So Jay Christ lived out this shift away from employer-supported retirement in real time. He got a graphic design degree in the early 80s and worked a few different jobs before landing at the printing giant R.R. Donnelley.
Donnelley was a big, 100-plus-year-old company. It had been around forever. And so they had all the traditional things. They had benefits packages, and they had a pension. And so when somewhere in maybe the early 90s, Donnelley said something about, hey, you guys that were here for a while are going to be vested in our pension, but we're canceling it. And then along came the good old 401k stuff. So, hey, we'll invest if you invest. And so you start to put money in that. First they were going to match at 6%. And it was, we're going to match you at 4%. We'll match you at 1%. Well, now we're not matching at all, but keep putting your money in here. So a lot of that, I guess the perk or that benefit of having a company help you with your retirement disappeared. But, with family, kids, the amount of money you decide you are now going to put into something that you have to manage your budget, manage your money, started to slide on the priority list because I had, kids. My wife had some illnesses. My daughters had. So your retirement funding fell off your radar.
You stopped putting money into it?
I didn't completely stop. I think at one point, though, it was down to only maybe a 2%, investment from my paycheck. But there was no company match at that point. It was just whatever goes in. And then when I was actually then laid off after 27 years, and at that time, the way the rules worked is that I didn't have to pay a penalty if I accessed some of that 401k money. And because of the huge change in my income, I used a bunch of it just to get other, bills paid down, some medical expense paid off. And so I burnt through it. Plus the 401k and the stock market at the time, I don't remember what year, it took a beating. Everybody just got hammered. So the value of it fell tremendously.
Chris was 56 when his division was downsized in 2016. He was a mid-level manager making close to $100,000 a year, and he'd been with Donnelly for 27 years, expected to finish out his career there.
Where am I going to find a job that pays me about what I'm making, and allows me to finish a career in this industry? And being 56 became immediately an apparent thing in my head, because it's like, now, where are you going to go? If here's this, person who's, in their mid 30s, has a college degree, maybe even a master's or something, and that's on my desk to look at resumes, and here's this person with 27 years in a specific industry, you do the math.
Economist Teresa Ghilarducci says this is an incredibly common story. More than half of people in retirement today were effectively forced into it by layoff or disability. The idea that we can choose when we retire is a myth for most people. After months trying to land a similar position in the corporate documents industry, Jay Christ finally just took a low-level job at a small print company, mainly for the health benefits.
I do kind of whatever they need, but then I also took another part-time job. I had 2 part-time jobs and a full-time job for years. My work week is about 60 plus hours a week, 6 days a week. And it's been that way since maybe 2017.
What are those part-time jobs that you're doing?
Well, so at one point I was at a Planet Fitness, a fitness center, and worked nights. So when I was doing the 3 things, it was like the regular 8-hour-a-day job, and that was for the small print company. And I'd come home and I would sleep for a couple hours. And I would go to the gym around 8 o'clock, and that was till about 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I would go home and sleep, and I'd get up and I'd go to work at the full-time job. The gym was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. And then I picked up the hours at the brewery on Sunday, basically serving beer for about a 6 hours, 7 hour shift.
Oh.
So that went on for quite a while, until, it was wearing me out, and not sleep was terrible. And the brewery needed some additional hours. So I quit the gym and picked up more time at the brewery. So that's why it's just the one full-time job in the brewery. And I'm not anywhere near that previous salary.
He's now 63, and at some point he will have a small pension coming from those first few years at R.R. Donnelly. When he starts collecting Social Security in a few more years, that'll help too. But his wife is several years younger, and she has cancer, so he can't quit the full-time job at the print shop until she is 65 and can get Medicare. They're on a financial knife's edge.
I do start to get a little cynical about it. It's like, really, is this really the way we want our society to be? Is this really what you expect? And my dad was a school teacher, and he raised a family of 4 kids on a teacher's salary. They bought a house. And I look at my daughters now, how are they? They move in with 2 friends to afford rent. And can you save enough? And do you have enough? And pay for their college that they have loans for? So a lot of those things, the finances of the world today start to, I just think about that a lot, and I get cynical. If I keep working, I control a little bit of it too, So there is part of me that's like, yeah, working a part-time job and having that income and knowing that you have it, so long as you can do it, there's a certain weird comfort to that.
Yeah, sure.
Do I want to always be working till the end of days? I don't really think I want to, but I don't know.
Yeah. Jay, thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for inviting me on, and I appreciate it.
Jay Christ is an artist, by the way. You can find his work on Instagram at Jay Christ. He spells his name Jaye. So, in a do-it-yourself retirement system, the three-legged stool of Social Security, employer retirement benefits, and personal assets leans lopsidedly on a worker's own will to save for the long term. And with so many Americans failing to pull that off, retirement has become a luxury rather than a normal expectation for someone who's worked their entire life. But the 401k was supposed to be even better than a pension, a way to save money before taxes right from our paychecks and tap into the incredible upside of the stock market as aggressively as we chose to. So why hasn't that panned out for more people?
The typical 401k plan is the most lousily invested portfolio that the world has ever seen.
Next on Top of Mind, we'll get to the heart of the flaw in this do-it-yourself retirement scheme. I'm Julie Rose.
Hey, it's Julie. There is another podcast I think you're going to like from the BYU Radio family of podcasts, so I wanted to pass along the word. It's called In Good Faith. Join host Stephen Perry as he connects with believers from various religions: Christians, Buddhists, Jews, Muslims, and much, much more. Listening to their captivating stories is an opportunity to deepen our own understanding of faith, religion, and spirituality. Plus, Stephen is really well-traveled, and his global perspective brings a unique richness to each conversation. Elevate your appreciation for the divine with In Good Faith. It's an inspiring journey of unity and enlightenment. Listen anywhere you get podcasts.
I'm just going to show my ignorance here and admit that until I spoke with economist Teresa Ghilarducci, I didn't know how radically different a pension plan is from a 401k. Starting with this.
So a defined benefit plan is a plan in which you're automatically enrolled. You don't have a choice. You can't borrow from it or take it out before you retire.
This is the pension plan.
Yeah, defined benefit. And it's called defined benefit because your benefit is defined by your years of service and your pay.
It's a guaranteed monthly payment once you meet the retirement criteria. Kind of like Social Security, actually, where you get a check every month until you die.
And if you died, your spouse would get partial amount from your company. So it was for the worker, just like Social Security, it was a supplement. But for the economy, it was really different, meaning that the money that went into a big pooled fund of private assets. There were stocks and bonds, and today there's some private equity, a little bit of real estate, a little bit of international, a little bit of timber, a diversified portfolio. And when you have diversification in a big fund that's professionally managed, you can get rates of return that far exceed the 401k.
So, Professor Ghilarducci, at the peak then of the pension system, what percentage of Americans were actually kind of having the system work as intended with the robust pension and the Social Security?
Yeah, not everybody for sure. So the peak, was around the 1980s, and you had about 70% of households coming into retirement with a defined benefit plan. But now they weren't at an employer that had and they didn't stay there for 30 years, but they had at some point.
They might have done 2 years with the local government, or they might have had a stint. But we're not talking about like a payout that would, be enough to sort of cover them.
Yeah. That's right. But my data has shown that even if you had something, you had a stint, and you see this a lot with a lot of women who get a divorce, in their 50s, that they go back to work and work as a teacher for another 10 years until they're 65. Mm-hmm. That prevents poverty. Let's say that they had some kind of a pension before they were mothers and they dropped out. Well, that money comes in at maybe $300 to $500 a month, well, that's enough to make a difference to keep you in your house.
Yeah.
So it turns out we often underestimate the power of a modest amount of income guaranteed for the rest of your life.
So I retired at 55. I, for the rest of my life, will get that pension.
This is Penny Pennington Weeks.
I was a faculty member at Oklahoma State University and live in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I still live here 3 years later, which is how long I've been retired.
Her retirement story perfectly illustrates the power of pensions. Higher education is one of the few sectors where pension plans still exist, though not as universally as they used to. Government jobs and industrial companies with strong employee unions are the others. As professors at Oklahoma State, both Weeks and her husband had job stability. That's also unusual in today's economy. She spent 20 years there, and her husband even longer.
So we knew the pension was going to be there. So we have always looked at our retirement as having 3 legs: our Social Security, our pension, and the monies we save towards retirement. So we aggressively saved into that retirement.
Once their kids graduated from college, Weeks and her husband started maxing out their retirement contributions, and they put their home on a 15-year mortgage so they would have no debt by the time Weeks turned 55. She submitted her letter of resignation on her birthday.
And it felt pretty amazing.
And what does retirement look like for you then? How do you spend your days and weeks?
It's very relaxing. We rarely ever set an alarm clock anymore. Might have a cup of coffee on the back porch when it's beautiful weather, in front of the fire when it's cold, and go for a walk. My husband spends a lot of time volunteering at our local food pantry. I spend a lot of time writing and sharing through social media. I have a large following on Instagram, and mostly that following first came from the garden. When I started talking about retirement, it doubled. And, I get some comments who say, oh yeah, I'm 20-something or I'm 30-something and I'm retired. I think you're not working. I don't think you're retired. Retirement means that I have enough money saved that I have money coming in every single month, either from my investments, a pension, whatever it is. That's retirement. That's knowing that I have saved these monies because I was planning for my future.
You can find Penny Pennington Weeks posting about gardening and retirement on Instagram at Penny Pennington Weeks. So a good pension can lay the foundation for a comfortable and maybe even early retirement. And that's largely because it's a guaranteed payment for life from a pool of money that's managed professionally by your employer for maximum profit with low fees. A 401k, on the other hand, offers none of that, says economist Teresa Ghilarducci.
The employer says, forget about it. I'm not going to take the risk in the market. All I'm going to do, if you, employee, decide to be in the plan, because there's no mandate for you to be in the plan, you can put as much as you want into my menu of investment choices. You pay the fees on those investment choices, and you handle the risk that it's not invested well. I was at Bloomberg Studios today, and the person who did my makeup, and I always ask, do you have a 401k? Yes. What's in it? I have no idea. Mm-hmm. She's a single woman, and she told her HR person, put it all in safe things. And so she's getting 2% return. Whereas if you're in a company plan, let's say your state of California pension plan is earning 11%. That's night and day. That means the state of California worker will have a middle class income when they retire. They lived on a teacher's salary, and they're going to retire in the same neighborhood with the status of a teacher.
And the other key, the one other key difference that comes to my mind quite clearly then is that with a 401k, the amount of money that's in there is the amount of money, the end. Whereas a pension is like, as long as I hit my, however many years I put in, I get it for life. So depending on how long I live, it'll never run out. But a 401k, I can see that number depleting with every payout.
Yeah, you can actually live longer than your money. And in a situation where you can live longer than your money, you have a lot of anxiety that will happen to you, because there's no way you could go back to work when you're 85 and you may be kicked out of your house. I mean, the fastest growing group of homeless are seniors. And what happens is that first of all, your cortisol levels are much higher than people with an equivalent defined benefit plan, but you also stop engaging in life. Like you can't really give your grandchildren anything, and so you withdraw from that relationship. You can't go out with friends, so you withdraw from socializing. So along with that worry that you can outlive your money is a lot of adaptive behavior that creates loneliness, withdrawal, and disengagement. And if you ask people in their 50s, do you have a 401k? I think about 70 or 69% of people will say, yes, I have a 401k. Not at my current employer. That's less than half. But somewhere in my dim memory, I had a 401k plan. Now, when asked, how much money do you have? And they actually go to look, because most people don't know, they really only have several $1,000, maybe 10,000. It depends upon what group. The bottom half have nothing. That middle 40% have, the median amount is about $90,000 on a bad day, $120,000 on a good day. It's the top 10% where you're going to find the $500,000 dollars in their 401k or the $1 million in their 401k.
And I can access it, so it's accessible.
It's liquid. Yeah, and anything liquid leaks.
Okay. Which is why then a lot of people today maybe don't have as much in their 401k because they have tapped it at some point.
Yeah, they've tapped it, they've leaked it. And what comes with that, it's like the cherry on top. With that comes a lot of shame. Because you're told, hey, you should have just kept that in, dummy. Why didn't you just keep that in? But human beings have to live with other human beings. And if you have money lying around and there is a strong need, I don't know, they might say they had an emergency, but really we have emergencies, maybe 2 emergencies in our whole lifetime. But there are times when you really have a need and your family members have needs. You can't just let your money sit there if you can get access to it. But people are blamed for doing that. So we actually have a system that builds in guilt and shame and failure. And that's because we're the only country of our peers that call liquid accounts retirement accounts, and it's just a false name. They're emergency savings accounts.
My name's Cammie, and I'm 38 years old.
Cammie asked us not to use her last name.
So I'm a divorced mom with 4 kids. Oldest is 11, and youngest is gonna turn 2 here in the next month.
The youngest was playing at her feet as we spoke. Cammie is a nurse and has worked full-time for the same company for close to 15 years now, contributing to a 401k all of that time.
But when we were going through my divorce, I really wanted to keep my house, and I was focused on that for me and my children. And I gave all of my retirement to match the equity in my house, or where our mortgage was and everything, and I was able to negotiate that to keep the house. So that was in 2021, so about 3 years ago. So now I'm back at the beginning of my retirement. And obviously I'm doing all of that matching and putting everything in, but I'm also trying to do that while I'm taking care of my kids full time and make sure that, we can take care of our immediate needs now. And that's the part that I guess is scary, because you're trying to take care of the things that you need right now, but you know that you need to save for the future. And I would love not to work until I'm 70.
Can you see yourself doing this job physically, emotionally, mentally?
No, I could not be a nurse and keep my current job until I was 70. I already, going through the pandemic, totally got burnt out. So I'm going back right now. I'm in school to get my nurse practitioner, and part of that was motivated to help my future. So I should be able to earn more money, doing that degree. Even at my age, the benefits will be there.
I've actually had some similar thoughts. How long could I keep doing this job if I can't retire? Okay, hosting a podcast isn't exactly physically strenuous, so I'm luckier than many in that regard. But will anybody want to employ a 70-year-old podcast host? Or will I end up bagging groceries to supplement my income? Economist Teresa Ghilarducci says that when Congress raised the Social Security retirement age and paved the shift from pensions to 401ks back in the 1980s, working longer was a key part of the plan. And it wasn't just that we'd have to work longer. They said it would be better for us.
That work helps keep you young. It helps your brain, your cognition. Working longer actually gets you out of the house, gives structure to your day, and adds social connections. It turns out that a lot of people who are healthier have more cognition and are socially connected are the people who can get a job at that age. But it wasn't the work that got them into that state. They were already in that state. So there is no evidence that working is what brings you those good things.
So are you saying that most people who are in that category, they're working because they can't retire, are actually suffering?
Yeah, well, importantly, and it was a lot of my graduate students had helped, and a lot of other people that did this research as well as my own, that people who have those attributes, that they did get a job between 62 and 70, but the job that they got are jobs that are usually low paying, increasingly are split shift, where they are laid off in the afternoon when it's not very busy, but they're brought in for these busy periods. So they don't have very much control over their schedule and their low pay. That the combination of both, not having control over their time or the pace of their work, actually erodes older bodies more than it does for a young person. Like a young person having to take orders from a boss or having a wacky life does not have that same kind of impact on health that it does for an older person. So those kinds of jobs connected with an old body is particularly lethal. And we find out that for these kinds of jobs with these kinds of population actually hastens death. And so in this cynical way, retirement becomes more affordable because they have much less of it.
Because they work until they're 70 or 75 or whatever.
Until they're 70, and therefore that actually has hastened their death.
So here is what all of this means for this first generation of do-it-yourself retirees in America today. Let's imagine 100 people between the ages of 62 and 70, and they're at a party. As Ghilarducci works the room, she will encounter 10 people who are still working, even though they could comfortably retire.
They're sort of like me. I'm 66. I'm a tenured professor, and I control the pace and content of my job. I'm not doing any heavy lifting, and nobody's telling me what to do. Other people are senators and presidents and people in Congress. They're the ones that make the rules. Well, they also have a precious job like I do. I point myself out, and I point out the jobs of professors and politicians because we really are oddballs, but we're making retirement security policy. So I'm afraid that a lot of the policies that come out are because of the lived experience of the people who, us elites who have influence over retirement policy, have a very rare kind of experience.
Now, another 10 people at this party are retired, and they're doing just fine. Maybe they're spending their days in the garden or on the golf course.
Mostly they'll tell me that they worked, for about 35 to 40 years. So I expect to hear a story of pretty secure and continuous employment. I expect to hear that they had a pension plan.
And one or two of those comfortably retired folks might even be just back from Saint-Tropez or some other luxury vacation.
They will tell me a story about inheritance, or about a big payoff.
Selling a company or being the first in a startup or whatever.
Yeah, and all very interesting, but not really because it's not very broad.
So 20 people in this room of 100 retirement-age Americans are either comfortably retired or working simply because they want to. But the biggest group, 52 of the partygoers are retired and they're struggling.
They have not maintained their living standards or they're poor. You know, they're going to be huddled by the food, right? There's going to be free food in this at this party, and they're going to be there maybe with some plastic bags because they're going to take it home. And yeah, I'm going to hear a story of woe. They're going to be involuntary retired. And I'm going to hear about early diabetes, took their leg, or I'm going to hear about failing eyesight, or I'm going to hear about a company that closed and moved, or I'm going to hear about a bad boss that just made it miserable for them. Like forced out at 55 and then got a job at 56 and then forced out at 61. People who retired without enough money, you just look back at their work history and it got wonky, in their 50s.
So that brings us to the remaining 28 people at our party of 100 retirement age folks. This last 28 are not retired because they can't.
And they're working, and they're often working in jobs that don't pay very well. They've already claimed their Social Security, and they are working because they have to.
67-year-old Marianne O'Connor isn't really surprised to find herself in that last group, still working 40 hours a week, no retirement in sight.
My dad died at 65, and he had worked very hard in his career and never got to enjoy retirement. And I guess I just felt like you have to live for now because, retirement may never come.
Early on in her career as a bookkeeper, she had a 401k, but she drained it to cover health expenses and then never rebuilt it. In her 30s, she adopted 3 kids and raised them on her own.
Raising kids, I didn't want them to miss out on anything. So that was my priority.
When you thought about what your 60s, 70s, 80s would look like, what did you hope? What did you envision?
Well, I wanted to travel. And then when I realized I'll never have the funds to do it, I figured, I'll find a way.
So Connor has had her own bookkeeping business since 2007, and that is her main source of income. But in 2019, she started a trip planning business to try and do some of that travel she'd always dreamed of.
We have had some awesome trips. We've been to Belize and Mexico, the Azores and Italy. I have another trip to Azores coming up, going to Ireland in September. It's just been so much fun. It's a lot of work.
But you get to travel.
But I get to travel.
Her agency is called Kindred Women Travelers. And so far, it only barely breaks even. So O'Connor still puts in a full week bookkeeping. She shares a house she bought with 2 friends to keep expenses down. And she's trying to hold out until she's 70 before collecting Social Security so she can get the maximum benefit.
So I've got a little over 2 years to go. And, that will ease the burden, but it doesn't mean I can retire. So sadly, I've put my name on a list for senior housing, which I don't know if anybody wants to do that. I don't deal with death well. So the idea of only being around older people, it's just kind of scary to me in terms of losing friends.
Have you thought about moving in with one of your kids? Is that something
No, that's not possible. There's no space there.
So what's your best case scenario here? When you think 10, 15 years out?
I don't know. I guess I would love for my daughter and son-in-law to get to a place that they can buy a house and have me with them. That would be my choice.
So that you could be contributing Social Security to their
right.
expenses, but you wouldn't be doing this other work then.
I hope not. I don't think the travel business I'll be healthy enough to do it that far out.
Marianne O'Connor's travel business is online at kindredwomentravelers.com. So is it just inevitable that up to a quarter of retirees in America find themselves working and scrambling to make ends meet?
We could do a lot better. is something that we should have done 40 years ago, and it's what all of the other countries do.
We'll talk solutions next. I'm Julie Rose. This is Top of Mind.
We'll be right back to today's episode of Top of Mind. But first, are you ready to immerse yourself in the awe-inspiring world of nature? Then I recommend you listen to Constant Wonder. It's another great show from the BYU Radio family of podcasts. Join host Marcus Smith in riveting conversations with individuals whose lives have been touched by Earth's beauty and mysteries. Uncover captivating stories that shed light on our planet's wonders, from history to science and beyond. If you crave enriching experiences and a deeper connection with the world around you, tune in to Constant Wonder. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
In her new book, Work, Retire, Repeat, Teresa Ghilarducci lays out what she calls the Gray New Deal. And there are some big policy proposals in it, and also things individuals can do to improve their retirement prospects.
In the book, I have what to do while you wait for Congress, or to use your power. And you have power in a couple of ways. You have power as a consumer. Make sure that you buy the things that you only need. And that is not as easy as it sounds. It means really understanding why you want something. Why is that dopamine level so high? And I love dopamine. It makes me desire things. And desiring things is like one of the best feelings I've had. It's actually really good for the species because like we get up and we want to have sex or we want to go have food. But, you know, those kinds of neurochemicals that are in your body for survival of the species isn't really necessary for a handbag, you know, are things that we want so that we could display our status in a hierarchy.
So frugality, then.
Frugality, it sounds like austerity, but it's power. It's actually power over that dopamine. It isn't just like, ooh, tighten your belts, because that's really uncomfortable. Turn that kind of, I don't know, other people call it an abundance mentality, that you have enough. Like, take all the stuff out of your closet and fall in love with it. All right. And then with the money you have left over, make sure that you invest it well in your 401k. Demand from your employers that they only have Vanguard accounts. They're plain vanilla, but they're really low fee.
And Vanguard is an actual brand.
Yeah, and I'm not paid by Vanguard at all. I've never been there. I don't have friends that work there. Why that company matters the most for a mutual fund is because it's the only company where the account holders are shareholders. So the only duty of care that that company has is to you as the shareholder. So all the profits go to you, and it goes to you with lower fees. You also have power as a worker. Make sure that you keep your skills up, to brace yourself for the 50s, because it's a very shaky, dangerous place. But also, if you have a union, as a worker, you do have rights to form a union. You could have what my mother had. She did not have a college degree, and she had a job as a clerk. And every time they brought in a new computer system, her cortisol levels were sky high. But she knew she could learn it because the union would protect her from being forced out. So because the union was there, she got a new skill. And the other place that you need to use your power is as a voter, because your Social Security and your Medicare together is worth nearly $1 million. So make sure that politician knows that you need your Medicare and your Social Security. Now, what the bold proposals are is something that we should have done 40 years ago, and it's what all of the other countries do. And we should put everybody into a pension plan as soon as they start paying Social Security. And there is a bill in Congress that will do that.
So this would be run by the government?
It would be a supplement to Social Security, and you would contribute to it, but it would be your own individual account. So it's not even quite like a traditional plan, and it's not quite like a 401k, but it will look and feel more like a 401k, because money would be building not only because of your investments and your own contributions, but if you earn below $60,000, which is the median income, the government would be putting 5% in. Now, that money doesn't come in unless you contribute as well, but you could not take that money out.
Okay.
So you might be frustrated when you see that money build, and your kids might be frustrated because they see that money and they can't get it, but you can't get it. You're saved from yourself.
That proposal is called the Retirement Savings for Americans Act, and it's a rare example of bipartisan, bicameral support in Congress right now. The co-sponsors are a Republican and a Democrat in the U.S. House, and another two from the Senate. Republicans like it because it will get more people into the stock market. Democrats like it because they want to boost economic security for workers, says Ghilarducci. And making retirement better for everyone is better for all of us, she says.
Because our chances of living next door to a poor elder are the highest they've ever been since the Great Depression. And so if you care about living in a robust neighborhood where you don't have to avert your eyes when you see an older person, not wondering if they actually have food insecurity, then you want this plan. You also should care if you're attached to younger people who are going into the market, because if workers can retire in a dignified way at 62 and 65, where you're actually leaving some room open for promotion to a younger worker. And all those tens of millions of older workers won't be competing with those younger workers, putting downward pressure on wages. So a world in which people can retire with dignity is a world where there's a little more worker bargaining power. And with more bargaining power, you get better paying jobs and safer jobs. So there is a lot of side effects from people being able to retire: a more stable community, more stable neighborhoods, feeling better about the people that you're living with, and actually real palpable benefits in the labor market.
Teresa Ghilarducci is a professor of economics at the New School and 40-year expert on the labor economy and on retirement. A bunch of books about this issue, but her most recent, a brand new one, is called Work, Retire, Repeat: The Uncertainty of Retirement in the New Economy. Thank you so much for your time today, Professor.
Thank you, Julie. It's really a pleasure.
I mentioned earlier that I'm turning 50 this year, and when we started working on this episode, I was in a bit of a panic, realizing how few Americans are able to comfortably retire on their own terms. I've been contributing to a 401k throughout my career, but I've also been too afraid to actually sit down and do the math. But leaning into the facts for this episode motivated me to set up a meeting with a financial planner for the very first time. Better late than never, I guess. And there's one more story I'd like to leave you with, because it actually connected a few dots for me.
We are right now in Dadeville, Alabama, having a little repair on our trailer. We're just at a guy's shop.
Well, it's a beautiful location.
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
This is Elaine Jarvie. She's 68, and she was a good friend of my mom's, so I've been watching her retirement play out over the last 2 years on Facebook. Elaine and her husband, Gil, who's 70, are on the road in their Airstream trailer for about half of the year. So Elaine hopped on Zoom to talk to me from a folding table next to the trailer.
We spent a month in Yuma, and that turned out more fun than we ever thought. We learned how to play pickleball and made a lot of new friends. And then we did the Eclipse in Texas, and then we're just making a southern loop.
I have been so curious to know how the Jarvies pulled off what seems like a pretty idyllic retirement, because I knew that Gil had experienced a big layoff in his 50s, and he spent the last 15 years cobbling together various consulting gigs and part-time jobs. Elaine spent those years on staff in the ticketing office at Brigham Young University, and they'd done a fair amount of shifting and downsizing into their 60s.
We had a wonderful accountant when we were fairly young that told us about 401ks. We hadn't paid a lot of attention at work. So we're probably in our early 30s. And so he said, take advantage of that all that you can. So we just did our best all the time. So we always saved at least 10%, sometimes up to 20%. And we're, medium careful. We're not financial geniuses. And we didn't really have an exact plan of when we wanted to retire. I really liked my job over at the ticket office. I knew I wanted to have Medicare. So I needed to be at least 65 because that's so expensive. And he had always dreamed about having an Airstream. And The reason we could do that is his mother and father had both finally just passed away. And we had enough of inheritance to buy it. So we were very lucky. So that was we think about them every time we use it because they brought these kind of dreams to us because of their frugality and their being careful with what their resources they had. And that's why we can travel.
They both also have pensions.
And that's kind of a miracle in this day and age. Mine's not huge. I didn't work at BYU that long. But Gil's is decent. It's a couple of $1,000 a month. Then Social Security on top of that. So that makes it nice. And like I say, we're not financial geniuses. Our house isn't paid for yet. We've downsized and it's small. It's not a huge debt. But we're not ready just to walk away from everything or have total independence. And so our part-time jobs just make it so when we go somewhere, we can do about any activity we want.
Part-time remote jobs?
Yeah. So Gil's still working for a charter school, and he does their enrollment communications. When he's home, he does tours, and he does all their social media.
He's a 70-year-old, and he's doing all their social media?
Yep. I think he does Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram every day.
He's probably got to be one of the oldest social media specialists on the job anywhere in the country.
I don't think he even had Instagram. Yeah, he had to learn. But his job that he does almost every day is for an emergency defibrillator AED company. So he's just customer service for about 3 or 4 hours a day. And does that.
Just on your computers. So even while you're on the road, you guys will just pull over?
Yeah, I did mine in the car. I work for a company that services Amazon brands. A couple of days a week, I spend 5 hours. Like on Mondays, I have a whole bunch I do. But other than that, it's about an hour and a half a day. So it's not very much.
And what are you doing those jobs for? Do you need the money?
We don't use our 401k. We'd like to leave something for our kids. So we'd like to leave that there. And so this is just our play money. We could technically live at home and not do too much on our pension and Social Security. But we're creatures of comfort, and we like to be generous with others and our children. And if we go to dinner, we like to pay. We just like to not worry about money. So we don't budget penny by penny. If we had our house paid off, which, we may someday once we inherited a little bit of money from my dad, but he's still alive. That would free things up for different kinds of decisions. But for right now, we still have some expenses. We keep hoping we can RV at least till we're 80, 10 years, 9 years from now. That'd be great. So it just depends on if we can keep our health and keep taking care of ourselves.
It's kind of that old adage of if you've heard one retirement story, well, you've heard one retirement story, Here they are working part-time tech jobs in their late 60s to make up for the fact that they still have a mortgage back home and they don't want to worry about pinching pennies. Their life on the road was only possible because they were lucky enough to inherit some money. And his plans to spend his whole career at a big corporation were cut short by layoff in his 50s, but he'd put in enough years to qualify for a pension, which is now the foundation of their retirement. Plus, they spent their working years at jobs that offered 401k savings plans, which was another bit of good fortune they took advantage of. So they're not jetting off to Aruba, but they are playing pickleball in Yuma, and they've gone vegetarian in hopes of making that last. In this do-it-yourself retirement system of ours, the best outcomes seem to require focus, flexibility, and a fair amount of good fortune. Top of Mind is a BYU Radio podcast. Today's episode was produced by Vanessa Goodman, James Hoops, and me, with help from Samuel Benson and Sam Payne. Our audio engineers are Kelsey Ney, Gabe Vargas, Josh Fouts, and Brandon Lewis. And be sure to check out our new companion podcast, Uncomfy, where we hear stories of people sticking with moments that challenge them. New stories drop every Wednesday over on the Uncomfy podcast feed. I'm Julie Rose. We'll talk soon.